The Scarecrow's curse. The town of Black Hollow was known for its peculiar legends. Hidden deep in the countryside, surrounded by endless fields of corn and hay, it was a quiet, sleepy place where strange things sometimes happened. The most persistent tale was about a scarecrow that came to life. People swore they'd seen it move, its straw-filled limbs jerking unnaturally under the moonlight. There were whispers of glowing eyes that burned like embers and a hollow, echoing laugh that sent chills down spines. Most dismissed the stories as drunken ramblings or old wives' tales, but Liam wasn't so sure. A curious and skeptical teenager, Liam had always been drawn to the unexplained. Unlike his classmates who rolled their eyes at the mention of the Scarecrow, he devoured every article, every hushed account from frightened farmers. What intrigued him most was that the sightings always happened near the old Carruthers farm, a desolate, abandoned property on the edge of town. Its overgrown fields and rotting barns were the perfect breeding ground for ghost stories. Liam decided to investigate. He couldn't resist the pull of the mystery, even if it meant venturing alone into the dark countryside. Armed with nothing but a flashlight, his phone, and a small pocket knife, he set out one crisp October evening, his heart pounding with a mix of excitement and fear. The air was heavy with the earthy scent of harvest, and the wind carried faint whispers through the cornfields. As he approached the Carruthers farm, the landscape grew eerier. The moon hung low, casting silver light over the skeletal trees and sagging fence posts. The barn loomed in the distance, its roof caved in and its windows blackened. In the center of the field stood the Scarecrow. Liam stopped in his tracks, his breath hitching. The Scarecrow was taller than he'd imagined, its tattered clothes flapping in the wind. A wide-brimmed hat shaded its face, and its head was a burlap sack stuffed with straw. Button eyes stared out blankly, and a crooked grin was stitched across its face. It looked harmless, just a collection of old clothes and straw meant to frighten off birds. But there was something unnerving about the way it stood, its posture too rigid, its presence too commanding. Liam shook off his unease and climbed over the rusted gate. His boots crunched against the dry earth as he made his way toward the Scarecrow. He'd read enough horror stories to know this was the part where most people turned back, but he was determined. He needed to see it up close to prove to himself and everyone else that it was just a stupid old scarecrow. As he approached, the wind died down, leaving the air unnaturally still. His flashlight flickered, the beam cutting through the darkness in uneven bursts. He shone it on the Scarecrow, inspecting it carefully. There were no glowing eyes, no signs of movement. He let out a shaky laugh. "Just a dumb story," he muttered, stepping closer. That's when he noticed the markings. Etched into the wood of the post, just beneath the Scarecrow's feet, were strange symbols. They were jagged and crude, like they'd been carved with a rusty blade. Liam crouched down, running his fingers over them. He didn't recognize the symbols, but they looked ancient, sinister. A chill crept up his spine. Suddenly, a sound broke the silence, a low, rasping groan that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. Liam froze, his heart hammering in his chest. He whipped his flashlight toward the Scarecrow, and for a split second he could have sworn its head had tilted. "Hello?" he called, his voice trembling. There was no response, just the soft rustle of corn stalks in the distance. Liam laughed nervously, trying to convince himself he was imagining things. He turned to leave, but as he did, the Scarecrow's head moved again, snapping to face him. "Liam!" The voice was barely a whisper, but it sent icy tendrils of fear crawling through his veins. He spun around, his flashlight trembling in his grip. The Scarecrow was still, its button eyes glinting in the moonlight. But the stitched grin seemed wider now, more menacing. Liam backed away, his pulse racing. "Who's there?" he shouted, his voice cracking. Then the Scarecrow moved. Its arms jerked upward, the straw creaking and groaning as though it hadn't moved in centuries. Its legs twisted, freeing themselves from the post. Liam's scream caught in his throat as the Scarecrow stepped down, its movements stiff and unnatural. It towered over him, its hollow eyes glowing faintly red. "Why have you come here?" it rasped, its voice like dry leaves scraping together. Liam stumbled backward, tripping over a rock and falling hard onto the ground. The Scarecrow loomed closer, its shadow stretching over him. He scrambled to his feet, his mind racing. This couldn't be real. It had to be a dream, a prank, something. But the cold terror gripping his chest told him otherwise. "Stay away!" he shouted, waving his flashlight like a weapon. The Scarecrow laughed, a deep, hollow sound that echoed across the field. "You shouldn't have come," it said. "Now you'll share their fate." "Their fate?" Liam's voice was barely a whisper. The Scarecrow tilted its head as if amused. "The others, the ones who didn't believe, they're with me now. Forever." Liam's blood turned to ice. He thought of the rumors, the missing people, the strange disappearances near the Carruthers farm. He dismissed them as superstition, but now he wasn't so sure. He turned and ran, his legs pumping as fast as they could carry him. Behind him, he heard the Scarecrow's heavy, shuffling footsteps, accompanied by its haunting laugh. He didn't dare look back. When he reached the edge of the field, he risked a glance over his shoulder. The Scarecrow was gone, the field eerily still, but the symbols on the post glowed faintly, pulsing with an unnatural light. Liam didn't stop running until he was home. He locked the door, bolted the windows, and curled up in his bed, clutching his flashlight like a lifeline. He didn't sleep that night, and when the morning came, he vowed never to go near the Carruthers farm again. But the Scarecrow wasn't done with him. Over the next few days, Liam started noticing strange things. Straw appeared in his room, scattered across his floor. At night, he heard whispers outside his window, soft and menacing. And then, one evening, he found a single burlap button lying on his pillow. The Scarecrow had marked him. Liam's fate was sealed, just like the others. And as the days turned into weeks, the townspeople noticed his absence. Another name added to the growing list of the missing, another soul claimed by the Scarecrow's curse. In the fields of Black Hollow, the Scarecrow stood tall once more, its grin wider than ever, its glowing eyes a reminder of the horrors that lurked in the dark.